Judge Raymond Whitmore's words hit Maya Williams like a punch in the stomach. "If you win this case, I'll resign." The courtroom fell into a hushed silence, whispers rippling across the crowd. Maya, a young black attorney standing alone at the plaintiff's table, felt every eye on her. The public humiliation was palpable. Whitmore leaned back, cold amusement on his face. "If you lose, you may want to reconsider whether you belong in this profession." Laughter trickled from the defense table, where Daniel Mercer smirked confidently. Maya's chest tightened. She could request a continuance. No one would blame her. The lead attorney had collapsed, leaving the case in her hands at the last moment. But stepping back now would undo everything she had worked for. Her mother had cleaned office buildings late at night so Maya could stay in school. Neighbors had scraped together money for her books, prayed for her, and told everyone that one day Maya Williams would fight for those ignored by the system. To them, she was proof that someone from their streets could rise. Folding now would be more than personal failure. It would let them down. She lifted her head. "No, Your Honor." Whitmore narrowed his eyes. "No what?" "No continuance. I'm prepared to proceed." The courtroom murmured in surprise. Whitmore's smile returned. "Very well. Then let's begin." Daniel Mercer argued first, claiming the wrongful conviction claim was baseless, settled long ago, and without legal grounds. When he sat down, satisfied, Whitmore turned to Maya. She stood, trembling, gripping her mother's old pen for strength. "Your Honor, this case is not about old wounds. It's about correcting a lie." Silence swept through the room. She continued. "Leonard Brooks spent 22 years in prison because evidence was hidden and witness statements were buried." Mercer objected immediately, but Whitmore overruled. Maya pressed on, presenting a witness statement taken 3 days before the original trial, naming another suspect, never disclosed to the defense. Whitmore banged the gavel, calling for a recess to review the new evidence. Gasps and whispers filled the room. Reporters scrambled and Mercer looked rattled. Whitmore disappeared into chambers. Alone, Maya stared at the statement, adrenaline fading, realizing Whitmore panicked because the evidence should not exist. Benjamin Hayes, observing her from behind, confirmed her suspicion. Whitmore feared her, not because she was weak, but because she might win. Maya spent hours reviewing the original prosecution archive, uncovering suppression orders signed by Whitmore himself. The realization struck her. The judge before her had built the case he now presided over. She called Benjamin. "I found everything," she said. Silence, then, "God help him." The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Maya, now empowered, submitted records confirming Whitmore's prior role. The courtroom erupted in whispers and gasps. Mercer objected, but Whitmore's face betrayed unease. Maya's persistence forced a partial retreat, but the battle had only begun. She understood fully. Winning meant exposing a system, not just a case. Outside, the city awaited the confrontation, unaware that a young attorney from Southside Chicago had already begun to dismantle decades of corruption. Maya returned to the courthouse before sunrise, seeking the quiet she needed to prepare. Benjamin Hayes was already waiting, handing her a coffee. "You slept?" he asked. "Not much," she admitted. "Good," he nodded. "That means you understand the stakes." The courtroom was fuller than ever. Word had spread. People were no longer expecting a young attorney to fail. They were here to witness something historic. Whitmore entered, composed yet alert, instantly recognizing Maya's newfound confidence. The bailiff called the room to order. Proceedings began, and Mercer renewed motions to strike evidence and seek sanctions. Maya stood her ground. "Your Honor, plaintiff submits documented evidence," she said, presenting employment records proving Whitmore's lead role in Brooks's prosecution. The room erupted in gasps. Whitmore slammed the gavel, fury flashing in his eyes. "This is dangerous territory, Miss Williams," he warned. "No, Your Honor," she replied. The courtroom held its breath. She laid out the suppression orders, witness statements, and handwritten notes. Whitmore's face drained. The truth was undeniable. Benjamin remained behind her, silent yet steady, as she continued to expose the extent of the misconduct. Every attempt to interrupt or intimidate only made Maya more resolute. She had learned that subtlety would not stop Whitmore. She needed to go around him to prove his direct involvement. By afternoon, Maya had collected affidavits, personnel records, and internal memos linking Whitmore to the suppression. The courtroom battles raged, with Whitmore abusing his authority to silence her at every turn. Benjamin advised, "Stop trying to prove theory, prove his involvement directly." She left the courthouse for the county archives, retrieving historical records confirming Whitmore as lead prosecutor. Each signature, each memo, traced him directly to the original wrongful conviction. Maya spent the night organizing evidence. The firm warned her to narrow her focus, but she refused. 22 stolen years demanded courage beyond compliance. By morning, she had built a record no one could ignore. She and Benjamin prepared for the next confrontation, knowing the stakes had escalated from a courtroom fight to exposing systemic corruption. Whitmore was powerful, but Maya's resolve was stronger, fueled by the faces and stories of those silenced for decades. The first move in her offensive was ready, and the city was about to witness a reckoning. That night, Maya sat alone in her office, reviewing every witness and document connected to the original Brooks conviction. Most witnesses had retired, some had died, and others were unwilling to speak. Then she found Detective Marcus Holloway, the lead investigator, now retired and still with an address on file. Benjamin accompanied her as she knocked on his door. Holloway's suspicion was palpable. He tried to close the door, but Maya stopped him. "Please, I only need 5 minutes. "I have nothing to say about that case," he said. "You put an innocent man in prison," Maya pressed. For a moment, Holloway paused, revealing the faintest crack in his armor. He admitted he had submitted a witness statement identifying another suspect 3 days before the trial, which was removed from the file by Whitmore personally. Holloway confirmed that only he and one assistant prosecutor knew. He agreed to sign a single statement under oath, tying Whitmore directly to the suppression. Maya left with Holloway's affidavit, understanding that this witness now gave them a direct line to prove misconduct. Benjamin advised her to move fast, to prevent Whitmore from silencing any more participants. The next morning, Maya traveled to Neepville to confront Elaine Porter, another former prosecutor involved in the original Brooks case. Porter initially resisted, fearful for her life, but Maya pressed with the truth of their collective stakes. Finally, Porter admitted Whitmore did not act alone and revealed the existence of a private storage unit containing detailed backup records, kept to protect the network if needed. That night, Maya and Benjamin broke into the storage unit. They discovered folders, cabinets, and envelopes containing every suppression order, internal correspondence, and ledger of connections across multiple cases. Maya realized the scope was massive, far beyond Brooks. These documents linked judges, prosecutors, city officials, and law firm partners to decades of manipulated cases. As they processed the files, headlights flashed outside. 2 men in dark suits entered the unit, searching for the documents. Maya and Benjamin narrowly escaped through a maintenance corridor, sprinting into the night. Gunfire cracked behind them, a bullet striking near Maya's feet. They reached safety in the car, breathless and shaken. The scale of corruption had become undeniable, and the stakes were now life and death. They understood the machine was willing to kill to protect itself. Back in the office, they began sorting evidence, determining that Brooks' case would serve as the opening to dismantle Whitmore's network. Maya and Benjamin worked through the night, fully aware that this was no longer about winning a case, but about exposing a citywide conspiracy. The following morning, Maya and Benjamin returned to the courthouse, armed with affidavits, records, and detailed evidence linking Whitmore to multiple suppressed cases. Maya filed motions, requesting immediate recusal and disclosure of all prosecutorial personnel involved in the original Brooks conviction. The courtroom was packed with reporters, law students, and colleagues curious to witness the historic confrontation. Whitmore entered, composed but wary, instantly sensing the gravity of what Maya had uncovered. As proceedings began, he attempted to suppress the evidence and reassert authority, but Maya stood firm, presenting the documents that traced his role as lead prosecutor on the Brooks case. The courtroom erupted with whispers and gasps. Whitmore's composure faltered. Every objection from Mercer, her opposing counsel, was met with precise legal counters from Maya. Benjamin reminded her to focus on proof of direct involvement, not speculation. Maya's persistence forced Whitmore into defensive postures. His rulings, once a shield, now revealed his vulnerability. During a recess, Maya organized additional affidavits and memos to reinforce the evidence, knowing the next session could determine the trajectory of the case. She recognized the courtroom had shifted from a stage of intimidation to one of revelation. Whitmore's network of influence, meticulously documented, was now exposed to the public eye. The young attorney from Southside Chicago had transformed the dynamic, turning fear into leverage. Every document she presented tightened the net around Whitmore's past actions, and each revelation energized the courtroom audience. It became clear this was more than a single case. It was a reckoning. Maya's strategy was deliberate, methodical, and unwavering. She would not retreat. Her fight had become a mission to restore justice, correct systemic failures, and illuminate corruption. As the day ended, Maya left the courthouse exhausted but resolute, fully aware that Whitmore's downfall was imminent and that each step forward brought them closer to exposing the entire corrupt network behind Leonard Brooks's wrongful conviction. That afternoon, Maya focused on corroborating witness statements while Benjamin coordinated with retired investigators and former prosecutors willing to speak. Every lead added depth to the growing web of Whitmore's corruption. They cross-checked financial records, personnel files, and previous case notes, confirming a consistent pattern of evidence suppression and procedural manipulation. Each document reinforced the direct involvement of Whitmore and implicated others within the legal and political system. By evening, Maya had assembled a complete chronology of the Brooks case, tracing signatures, orders, and memos back to Whitmore and his accomplices. Benjamin reminded her of the stakes. They were challenging decades of entrenched power. The next morning, Maya returned to the courthouse with freshly prepared filings, including detailed affidavits from Holloway and Porter. Whitmore's usual poise was fractured. He attempted to shut down proceedings, but the court could not ignore the weight of documentation. Maya's arguments were precise, rooted in undeniable evidence, and aimed at exposing systemic misconduct. The gallery watched in silence, aware that this young attorney was dismantling a powerful legacy. Whitmore attempted to reclaim authority, but every objection, every motion to strike evidence was met with counterproof, leaving him increasingly isolated. By afternoon, the pace of revelations escalated. Benjamin whispered advice, reinforcing strategy, maintain focus on documented facts, avoid speculation, and continue building an irrefutable record. Maya's relentless pursuit began yielding results. Whitmore's earlier confidence waned, the courtroom atmosphere charged with tension and anticipation. By the end of the day, the first cracks in the judicial facade were visible, and Maya understood that exposing Whitmore was only the beginning. The broader network, connected by suppressed evidence, political influence, and financial leverage, had yet to be fully revealed. Maya and Benjamin left the courthouse, aware that each filing, each witness statement, was moving them closer to a historic confrontation that would reshape justice in the city. That night, Maya and Benjamin strategized over the evidence, aware that each step forward exposed them to personal risk. Maya reviewed Holloway's affidavit, Porter's testimony, and the newly recovered storage unit files. Each document corroborated a deliberate pattern of misconduct orchestrated by Whitmore and his allies. They plotted their next move, presenting the most compelling evidence to force an official review without giving the network time to respond. The following morning, Maya entered the courthouse with a renewed sense of purpose, aware that Whitmore's veneer of control was cracking. The courtroom was packed, the press aware that a pivotal confrontation was underway. Maya submitted additional evidence connecting Whitmore to suppressed witness statements and financial records, presenting them calmly but forcefully. Whitmore's attempts to block her were increasingly futile. Benjamin whispered tactical advice, reminding her to stick to verifiable facts. The gallery watched in anticipation, sensing that this was no longer a typical trial, but a decisive battle against entrenched corruption. By mid-afternoon, Whitmore's usual dominance had eroded. His rulings increasingly favored procedural obstruction rather than justice. Maya pressed forward, methodically documenting his interference and linking it directly to prior misconduct. The courtroom became a theater of accountability, with the young attorney exposing decades of concealed actions. As the day ended, Maya left the courthouse physically exhausted but mentally resolute, fully aware that the exposure of Whitmore was imminent. and that every careful step taken had brought them closer to dismantling a deep-rooted system of corruption and injustice. Maya spent the evening at the office, meticulously organizing evidence recovered from the storage unit and compiling witness statements. Benjamin monitored external developments and coordinated secure communications with legal contacts. Every document reinforced the pattern of misconduct. Whitmore's suppression orders, internal memos, and ledgers detailing political favors and financial incentives. The following day, Maya returned to the courthouse, determined to present the strongest case possible. She submitted newly discovered evidence showing Whitmore's direct involvement in removing exculpatory testimony, linking it to larger networks within the city government. The courtroom was tense. Whitmore's previous confidence had waned, replaced by caution and visible unease. Maya's measured approach, presenting irrefutable facts and witness affidavits, began to turn the tide. Mercer's objections fell flat against the weight of documentation, and Whitmore struggled to maintain control. Benjamin whispered guidance, emphasizing focus on evidence over speculation. Maya methodically laid out each connection, demonstrating not only misconduct in the Brooks case, but a pattern extending across multiple convictions. The gallery, once skeptical, now followed every word with rapt attention. By late afternoon, Whitmore's authority was visibly eroding, and the courtroom recognized that the young attorney had uncovered a structural corruption of unprecedented scale. As Maya exited the courthouse, she understood that exposing Whitmore was just the first step. The broader system that had supported him for decades was next. Every piece of evidence, every affidavit, every filing contributed to a narrative powerful enough to hold those responsible accountable and restore faith in justice. Over the next 48 hours, Maya and Benjamin worked tirelessly, cross-referencing financial records, campaign contributions, and case files. They traced a pattern connecting Whitmore to the mayor's office, city officials, and other influential figures. Every signature, memo, and ledger entry reinforced the systematic manipulation of cases for political and financial gain. By dawn, they had assembled an airtight package, demonstrating not only Whitmore's misconduct, but the broader network enabling it. Maya prepared an emergency filing, highlighting the direct suppression of evidence, Whitmore's conflict of interest, and the orchestration of wrongful convictions. In the courtroom, Whitmore attempted to maintain composure, but Maya's presentation revealed cracks in his authority. Each document submitted exposed further connections, weakening his ability to object or manipulate proceedings. The gallery, packed with reporters and legal professionals, followed every word, realizing that this was a historic unraveling of a decades-long corruption scheme. Benjamin guided Maya strategically, ensuring that every piece of evidence reinforced the case without allowing room for dismissal. By mid-afternoon, Whitmore's attempts to regain control had failed. His prior dominance was visibly diminished. Maya had transformed the proceedings from a courtroom struggle into a public reckoning, systematically dismantling the network that had perpetuated injustice for over 20 years. As the day concluded, Maya left the courthouse, aware that exposing Whitmore was only the opening salvo, and that the entire corrupt system required accountability and transparency. She and Benjamin understood that the next steps would determine whether justice could finally prevail. Maya and Benjamin knew the stakes had escalated beyond any courtroom. With the evidence assembled, they carefully planned a sequence of filings and witness testimonies to bring the corrupt network into the light. Maya presented each document, affidavit, and ledger with precision, ensuring no room for dismissal. Whitmore, once commanding and arrogant, showed signs of panic as his past actions were laid bare before the court and the press. Each revelation exposed further links to city officials, law enforcement, and political operatives. Benjamin reminded Maya to keep the focus narrow and clean, targeting the indisputable evidence first. The courtroom audience, aware of the historic magnitude, followed every argument with intensity. Whitmore's repeated attempts to obstruct or intimidate failed under the weight of documentation. By evening, the tide had clearly turned. The once untouchable judge was now vulnerable. Maya understood that their strategic presentation not only threatened Whitmore, but also the entire network he had protected for decades. The courtroom and city alike were witnesses to the unmasking of a carefully orchestrated system of corruption, and Maya and Benjamin had just begun the work of dismantling it piece by piece. By the following morning, Maya had secured additional affidavits from former prosecutors and investigators, solidifying the connections between Whitmore, city officials, and systemic manipulation of wrongful convictions. She entered the courthouse early, her evidence meticulously organized and cross-referenced. The courtroom was crowded, reporters and legal professionals eager to witness the unfolding events. Maya presented her findings with clarity, outlining each suppression order, witness statement, and financial ledger linking Whitmore directly to misconduct. Every objection Whitmore and Mercer raised was countered with incontrovertible proof. The gallery followed every detail, recognizing that this was a historic confrontation against entrenched corruption. Benjamin provided guidance throughout, ensuring Maya remained focused and precise. As the day progressed, Whitmore's authority visibly weakened. His prior control had eroded under the weight of evidence. Each revelation heightened public scrutiny and media attention. Maya's strategic presentation not only exposed Whitmore, but also threatened the broader network of officials and operatives who had maintained the corrupt system for decades. By evening, it was evident that the young attorney had shifted the balance of power. The courtroom had transformed into a stage of accountability, demonstrating the impact of relentless pursuit of truth and justice. Maya left the courthouse with a clear understanding. This was only the beginning, and the network's full exposure was within reach. Maya returned to the office that evening, exhausted but determined. She and Benjamin had spent the day in the courtroom, presenting evidence that exposed Whitmore's role and the systematic suppression of exculpatory testimony. Now they shifted focus to consolidating the next wave of proof: financial ledgers, communications, and internal memos connecting Whitmore to city officials and political operatives. Every detail reinforced the pattern of corruption and manipulation of wrongful convictions. By late night, Maya had mapped the broader network, identifying links to other judges, prosecutors, and law enforcement officials who had been complicit or influenced by Whitmore. She prepared an expanded filing for immediate submission, ensuring that the narrative and evidence left no ambiguity regarding misconduct and systemic abuse of power. Benjamin reviewed each page, confirming that the documents were airtight. Maya understood that each filing, each affidavit, increased both their leverage and personal risk. When the next morning arrived, they returned to the courthouse with renewed resolve. Whitmore entered the courtroom, his usual composure strained. Maya presented the new evidence with precision, citing suppression orders, affidavits, and financial documents. The gallery watched in silence, journalists scribbling notes furiously. Whitmore's repeated attempts to block submissions and object to filings were ineffective against the meticulously organized record. By midday, it was clear to everyone present that the young attorney had effectively dismantled his authority, exposing a corrupt system that had endured for decades. Maya and Benjamin's strategy had worked. Whitmore was now on the defensive, the city's legal machine shaken, and the broader network of misconduct vulnerable to scrutiny. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation, knowing that the next series of revelations would accelerate the unraveling of entrenched corruption and set the stage for historic legal accountability. Maya and Benjamin knew that the stakes had escalated beyond any courtroom confrontation. They spent the night cross-referencing evidence from storage units, affidavits, and financial records, piecing together a web that connected Whitmore to city officials, law enforcement, and political operatives. Every suppressed witness statement, memo, and ledger entry pointed to systemic corruption. The following morning, Maya returned to the courthouse armed with newly compiled evidence, ready to confront Whitmore and his allies with irrefutable proof. The courtroom was charged with anticipation, reporters and legal professionals waiting for the next revelations. Maya presented documents linking Whitmore directly to suppression of exculpatory testimony, his conflicts of interest, and the orchestration of wrongful convictions to benefit a network of officials. Every objection and motion to strike evidence from Mercer was countered with airtight proof. Whitmore's confidence visibly cracked, and the courtroom recognized that this young attorney had gained unprecedented leverage. Benjamin guided her strategy, ensuring that every move reinforced the narrative and exposed the full scope of the corruption. By afternoon, Whitmore's authority was diminished. His attempts to intimidate and control the proceedings were no longer effective. The gallery watched in awe as Maya methodically documented misconduct, making the systemic abuses undeniable. By the end of the day, it was clear that they had not only targeted Whitmore, but also illuminated a deeply entrenched network. Maya left the courthouse, understanding that the next steps would escalate the exposure of this corruption to levels that could reshape accountability throughout the city's legal and political landscape. As the days progressed, Maya intensified her investigation, following every lead from financial records to hidden correspondence. Benjamin coordinated with federal contacts, ensuring that each piece of evidence was verified and preserved. They identified connections between Whitmore and other city officials, uncovering patterns of interference in multiple wrongful convictions. The courtroom battles became increasingly intense as Maya presented documented proof of suppression orders, internal memos, and affidavits tying Whitmore to the system of corruption. Mercer's objections grew desperate, and Whitmore's authority continued to crumble under the weight of irrefutable evidence. Each revelation was meticulously recorded, building an airtight case. The media, aware of the high-profile nature of the confrontation, followed every step, amplifying the public pressure on the network. Maya's strategy focused on exposing the most concrete connections first, gradually revealing the broader conspiracy. By the end of the week, Whitmore's influence had been significantly diminished, and the city's legal machinery was shaken. Maya and Benjamin understood that their next filings and witness presentations would be critical in dismantling the remaining network. Each calculated move increased both the visibility of corruption and the personal risk they faced, but the momentum had shifted irreversibly in their favor. The stage was set for historic accountability, with Maya and Benjamin leading the charge. The following morning, Maya and Benjamin focused on executing the final phase of their strategy. They gathered every verified document, witness affidavit, and ledger entry, creating a comprehensive narrative of corruption, suppression, and influence. Maya entered the courthouse with confidence, aware that Whitmore and his network were cornered. The courtroom, packed with journalists, lawyers, and spectators, waited to witness the culmination of her efforts. Maya presented evidence connecting Whitmore to multiple wrongful convictions, suppression orders, motions, and city officials, demonstrating a systemic network designed to protect the powerful at the expense of justice. Every objection from Mercer was met with unassailable proof. Whitmore's composure faltered, and the courtroom recognized the undeniable shift in authority. Benjamin advised careful pacing, ensuring the evidence was presented logically, emphasizing direct involvement before exposing the broader network. Maya methodically laid out the financial and political connections, illustrating a citywide pattern of corruption. By afternoon, Whitmore's control was effectively nullified. The audience and press understood the scale of the wrongdoing. Maya's strategy had succeeded in exposing the network's infrastructure, forcing Whitmore and his allies into defensive positions. The day ended with the court ordered to review misconduct allegations and the public now aware of the systemic issues. Maya and Benjamin left the courthouse, understanding that they had broken the first layer of protection shielding the corrupt network. The next phase would involve federal intervention and further unraveling of the political and judicial entanglements that had enabled decades of injustice. The final day of proceedings brought the culmination of Maya's relentless pursuit of justice. Federal investigators were now involved, and the courtroom was packed beyond capacity, journalists documenting every revelation. Maya presented the last pieces of evidence: surveillance records, financial ledgers, and sworn affidavits directly connecting Whitmore, Deputy Mayor Whitaker, and other officials to systemic corruption and the wrongful conviction of Leonard Brooks. The gallery watched in stunned silence as the documents proved manipulation of evidence, suppression of witnesses, and coordinated political interference spanning decades. Whitmore attempted to regain composure, but the weight of undeniable proof left him visibly shaken. Benjamin remained at Maya's side, ensuring the flow of evidence was coherent and irrefutable. By afternoon, the court ordered Whitmore's immediate recusal, pending a judicial misconduct review. The news spread instantly, sparking national coverage and public outrage. Mayor Holloway and his allies faced mounting scrutiny as Maya continued to present evidence linking them to broader misconduct. By evening, federal agents had executed raids and arrests were underway. Maya stood, exhausted yet resolute, as the city realized the depth of corruption she had exposed. Weeks later, the first of several convictions began to be overturned, and legal reviews were implemented to prevent future abuses. On Southside Chicago, the Williams Justice Center opened its doors, offering legal services to those previously denied justice. Maya, standing before her community, reflected on the journey, the courage to challenge entrenched power, the perseverance to pursue truth, and the responsibility to ensure that no child would ever grow up believing justice was inaccessible. She smiled at the faces of families she had empowered, knowing that change had begun. The fight would continue, but so would she. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and share this video.